I wanted to wait before doing a video on Captain Marvel just so I can see all the sides of the internet how they would react to it. And for the most part, the reaction seems to be overwhelmingly positive. However, there are groups of people who would tell you otherwise. When I first saw the trailer, I got pretty excited. I don't know that much about Captain Marvel. What I do know comes from watching YouTube videos, but nevertheless, seeing the cosmic hero chase subways and beat up old grannies was very entertaining. Young Sammy J was pretty awesome to see too, and I gotta say that trailer music was pretty badass.
I keep having these memories.
Now, there are quite a few comments stating that the trailer didn't get them hyped. I can kinda see why. There's no Thanos level threat shown in the trailer, the villain is unclear, and there wasn't actually much action revealed. Nothing to exclaim that this is the must-see movie of 2019. However, I would argue that this is a good thing for a first trailer, as I've seen, and I'm certain you've seen as well, multiple videos about who the villain could be or how the movie's going to play out and whatnot. It's gotten fans speculating and formulating theories of what will happen, which generates its own hype and gets people excited to see the next trailer find out more. Of course, this can backfire on a film as we saw with The Last Jedi. There were tons of videos of fans theorizing what was going to happen, and especially with theories about Snoke's true identity, the most popular one believing that Snoke was Darth Plagueis. As it turned out, most of those theories were wrong, and a lot of people were miffed about all the unrealized potential the movie had, and the hardcore Star Wars fans didn't like how the character was used. Personally, I like The Last Jedi. Then again, I'm just a casual fan, but from the standpoint of someone who just enjoys watching the movies and nothing more, I thought it was fine. But that's besides the point. I think the trailer's doing exactly what it was intended to do. Get people talking about the movie. They showed next to nothing of what will happen, but it's already gotten people speculating about it. From what I saw in the trailer, I feel as though this movie will be very down to earth. I know there's probably going to be a lot of space stuff in the movie, but what I mean by that is that the movie will be probably small scale. I expect something relative to the first Thor movie, where there was a large scale event looming in the background with the war with the frost giants and Loki being a huge dick and whatnot, but the majority of the movie takes place on Earth in basically one place. The major focus of the movie was Thor's character development that saw him become a humble hero worthy to wield Mjolnir. I think a big part of the movie will find Captain Marvel questioning if she is worthy to carry such a great power. Also, I bet the movie will poke fun at Captain Marvel for being so out of place and doing unorthodox methods, just like how Thor's cultural difference was a joke. This movie is an origin story, don't forget. The worst thing Marvel can do is start off a character saving the day against impossible odds. Captain Marvel will not be fighting a Thanos level villain, but she will be showing off her powers. I think one of the reasons why the DCEU failed, besides the fact that it tried too hard to be dark and gritty, was that they started with Man of Steel. Starting your cinematic universe with Superman isn't a bad idea, however they went overboard with it, having Soup stop an earth-shattering cataclysmic event that honestly would have been better fit for a team-up movie. Multiple Kryptonians show up on Earth and want to terraform it? Well, here's a group of superheroes that can help in various ways, instead of expecting Superman to be able to beat them all alone and stop the machine. Like, how are you supposed to one-up that for the next solo Superman movie? Every sequel movie would have to have a climax featuring an event that would directly end the world if Superman can't stop it. But if they did that, then why would Superman be fighting it alone and not have other heroes jump in? They created a situation where they would have to dumb it down for the other heroes not to take notice. An isolated situation only Superman would need to deal with, but then what would be the point? Because even though we know that more than likely the hero will win at the end of the movie, we all know which movie subverts that trope, that there's no real suspense to believe that someone like Superman would lose. But in order to have a small isolated incident that only Superman would care about would mean that there would be no real stakes. You would go from a planet-ending event to something on a much smaller scale. We've already seen Superman save the entire planet by himself and basically stop another planet-ending event by himself. Why would anyone care about an event that involves Superman that wasn't world-ending? You know? And it's not like the villain can kidnap his mom or Lois, because that's already happened in Batman v Superman. Why did you say that name? So while there might be an event that goes on in Captain Marvel on a universal scale, like the Kree-Skrull War, or the beginning of the Secret War, the focus of the movie will be about Captain Marvel adjusting to the hero role and using her powers for good. And whoever she fights at the end will be a powerful enemy, but not to the point that if she doesn't defeat them, the Earth is just dead. This way, we'll get a good grasp of her powers as regular Captain Marvel and as binary, and I have a theory about how they'll use that power, but I'll save that for another video. So while the movie would seem pretty cookie cutter, let's be honest. Most of the MCU movies follow a formula. The movie should be fun enough while keeping a relatively low scale. so they can build on the achievements of the character later on. I fully expect a movie similar to the first Thor, and I really like that movie, so that's fine with me. One thing that has me concerned is the notion that people think the movie will be low budget. I've seen a few videos of people saying this, but I'll be focusing on what The Quartering said in his trailer reaction video because he had the worst take on it. The Quartering, among other people, focused on the shot of Captain Marvel firing her energy beams, claiming that it looks...
The CGI looks kind of old, low budget.
Well, I have two reasons why you're wrong there, and they're Mars Attacks and Independence Day. Okay, maybe you're not wrong there, but I have an actual reason this time. Have you considered the fact that the movie isn't finished yet? They only just finished filming in July, and as of right now, they still have over 5 months till the movie hits theaters. That's 5 months of work yet to be done. And yet, you want to say the movie effects look old? I mean, it's not a money shot and probably won't be upgraded in the final product, since it'll be on screen for like half a second. But what about this shot from the trailer? This looks pretty good to me.
Oh, that looks really 90s.
Oh, well, maybe he's seeing something I'm not. I doubt it though. Does anyone remember that trailer for Desolation of Smaug, where Smaug was almost completely in shadows? Guess what? Smaug's model wasn't finished yet, so they couldn't showcase it. I don't know why they would use that clip for the trailer, but my point still stands. Movie trailers aren't a finished product, and even by the time the trailer comes out, they are still working on the movie. It's like when people were saying the Hulk from Thor Ragnarok looked like a PS2 character. I think these people severely overestimate the power of the PS2. And you know what? The Hulk was a PS2 character. Yeah, they look completely the same. People seem to remember the 90s wrong. Sure, there was Jurassic Park, and that was amazing, but then there was also Batman Forever. And since we're talking about Captain Marvel, I think comparing it to another superhero movie like Batman Forever is more appropriate. Yikes. I think everything shown in Captain Marvel trailer looks way better than this hot garbage. Now this next clip of The Quartering is by far the funniest.
I gotta say, of the effects, I don't know offhand what the budget for this film was for Marvel, but it seems low. It seems like this could very easily be like a Netflix series or an Amazon series or like a show on the CW. To that point, it looks like Iron Man 3 type effects.
Oh boy, let me explain. So according to Wikipedia, the budget for Captain Marvel sits at $152 million. Now I'll take this with a grain of salt, because Disney usually never says what the budget is for their films until long after they are released. The budget for Black Panther and Infinity War are still just estimated on Wikipedia, with Black Panther being between $200 and $210 million, and Infinity War between $316 to $400 million. But on other websites like Box Office Mojo, there is nothing. So for Wikipedia to have an exact estimate for Captain Marvel is a little weird. However, I was originally thinking between 150 and 160 million for the budget anyways, so this fits my estimate. There's something I want to point out about the movie budgets, because there seems to be a lot of people who have a weird perception of what a low budget movie is. Now, there is no exact number to say what the cutoff line for a low budget versus high budget movie is, but I did find an article titled "What is a Low Budget Movie" by the anonymous production assistant from January of this year, and it reads as follows. The DGA and SAG thresholds for low budget are similar, 2.6 and 2.5 million respectively. The Writers Guild draws the line way down at 1.2 million. IATSC, the union that covers most of the below the line crew, has 3 different tiers: below 6 million, between 6 and 10 million, and 10 to 14.2 million. Anything above that is full union rates. To give you a sense of scale, Get Out cost only 4.5 million. Then again, not paying the full crew union wages and benefits is probably how Blumhouse keeps their films profitable. A truly low budget film then is one with only 6 figures, so basically between $100,000 and $999,999. Beyond that, you're likely working under the auspices of at least one union or another, along with all the protections that confers. So let's go a little bit high and say that anything above $3 million is considered high budget. With Captain Marvel's budget at apparently $152 million, that means its budget is almost 51 times bigger than what would be the minimum requirements of a high budget film. So not exactly low budget. Of course, The Quartering states that he doesn't know what the budget was, but a quick Google search would have fixed that. Also, I want to point out that the MCU movie with the lowest budget is Ant-Man, with a budget of $130 million, roughly 43 times bigger than our $3 million cutoff line. Oh, and that comment about how Captain Marvel looks like it could be a Netflix series? Well, I have some interesting facts for you. The Crown, a Netflix original series, apparently had a budget of $130 million for the first season, although the show's creator has said that it's closer to $100 million for the first 2 seasons combined, so there's a bit of confusion there, but we can look at some other things Netflix is making, like Michael Bay's Six Underground, with a reported budget of $150 million, and then there's Martin Scorsese's The Irishman, with an estimated budget of $140 million, although there are reports that the budget is growing past that. It seems that Netflix likes to spend as much money on their projects as juggernauts like Disney does. So you can't really pull the Netflix card when you want to claim something looks low budget anymore. But possibly the funniest thing said about the quartering, however, is that he states that the effects from Captain Marvel trailer looks like something from Iron Man 3. Going along with the comment right before this one about how Captain Marvel looks to be low budget would seem to me like he's calling Iron Man 3 a low budget film as well. That's just... no. Like, what the hell does he consider high budget? Anything over 200 million? Well, if we use that as our cutoff line, let's see which MCU films would be considered high budget. That would mean only 4. That's right, 4 films would fit that criteria. The first Avengers, Avengers Age of Ultron, Captain America Civil War, and Avengers Infinity War, because I'm assuming it costs a shit ton of money. I'm also assuming that the budget for Black Panther to be at $200 million, which does not pass into the high budget range. I'm pretty sure Ant-Man and the Wasp does not cost more than Black Panther. Sure, the quartering probably has never looked at the budgets for these films, but to make an accusation that the MCU films are low budget, or at least some of them are low budget, is kinda ridiculous. Especially Iron Man 3. Like, why the fuck would Disney, after 2 successful Iron Man movies, just decide to make a shit, like, just take a shit on Iron Man 3 and give it a quote-unquote low budget? Someone clearly hates Iron Man 3, and this same person seems to hate Captain Marvel. Judging from his videos before his trailer reaction, he seems to have a notion that Captain Marvel is going to be a shit movie no matter what. And you know what? He may be right. It might turn out to be a garbage movie, and I'm prepared for that. But I'm also prepared to see a good movie. My mind is open for this movie, but the quartering has some kind of hate towards his movie, and he's entitled to his opinion. But to use that and try to, in any way he can, shame the movie and claim that it's low budget, and claim that other MCU movies he didn't like to also be low budget, at least that's how I interpreted what he says, is just fucking stupid. He clearly has no idea what he's talking about. Like I said earlier, the cheapest MCU movie had a budget that was 43 times larger than the minimum requirements to be called a high budget. All you need to do was Google search it. It's not that fucking hard. Anyway, my rant about the quartering is over and done with. My next rant, though, will be about a bunch of people claiming that Captain Marvel will flop at the box office. I have my opinions on why it won't be, and I can back these up with numbers and facts, something that these people cannot provide. And yes, I finally got into the part of my video where I explain why Captain Marvel do fine at the box office. I like to rant, okay? As you should know, the MCU is comprised of 20 films so far, and the most of them being extremely successful. Only one of those films was a box office flop, The Incredible Hulk. It pulled in a paltry $263,427,551 on a budget of $150 million. Yeah. To figure out how much money this movie lost, let's do some quick math. The budget for a movie isn't all the money a studio spends on that particular movie. A good rule of thumb is roughly 50% of the budget goes towards marketing as an additional cost, as well as movie theaters taking about 20 to 30% of ticket sales. So to find out how much profit a movie had or how much it lost, we need to take the budget of the film, add 50% for marketing costs to get the total estimate of what was spent, and then take the total box office grossing and subtract 30%. If we do this for the Incredible Hulk, we'll find that Marvel actually spent about $225 million, while only getting back $184,399,286. That's a loss of over $40 million. Yeesh. This is Marvel's only flop so far, meaning that Captain Marvel, with an estimated similar budget to The Incredible Hulk, would have to pull in similar numbers. But considering that the Hulk wasn't even able to gross $300 million and is the only MCU film to do that, it's kinda hard to believe that Captain Marvel would do as bad. In order for the Hulk to break even, it would have needed to gross roughly $325 million. I'm not getting exact numbers, I'm just rounding it to make this easier. If we look at the second lowest grossing MCU film, Captain America the First Avenger, and using the same formula, it made just under $50 million profit. That might not sound like a lot to you, but that was enough of a profit for Marvel and Disney to go ahead and make with a second Captain America movie, with a larger budget to boot. And that movie raked in nearly $245 million in profit. Just imagine having $50 million in the bank. That's a lot of money, and was clearly enough to sign a go-ahead for a second movie. Now, I can't say for sure how much money these rando people on the internet think a movie needs to make and profit for it to be considered a success. But considering how there are people out there that think a movie with a $200 million budget is a low budget film, I'm going to assume that in their minds a movie needs to make a ludicrous amount, something probably in the tune of $1 billion. Now that might not be the case, but unless you're one of those people and can tell me, I won't know. I mean, Disney would be extremely happy if Captain Marvel grossed $1 billion, but they're probably not expecting that. If they were, they'd probably give it a $250 million budget, and then that way no one would claim it was a low budget movie. Since Captain Marvel has an estimated budget according to Wikipedia that is basically the same as the Incredible Hulk's budget, that means that for Captain America to be considered a box office bomb, it would have to need to gross less than $325 million. Considering that out of the 20 MCU films before this one, that there has only been one to gross less than that amount, it's really hard for me to believe that Captain Marvel would gross so little. Of course, this all depends on if the movie is good or not. If the movie turns out to be bad, then yes, there's a very good chance it will bomb and lose money. But in that regard, there has never been an MCU film that has failed to be a good movie. If you look at Rotten Tomatoes, the lowest rated MCU film is Thor: The Dark World at 66%, which is a fresh rating. It's funny actually, because when I was looking at this list the day before I wrote this part of the script, the Incredible Hulk was sitting at 66%, but now it's at 67%, and it's flipped places with Thor. And also, there's no MCU film that has an audience score lower than 71%. For a franchise that is a decade old with 20 films under its name, to not have a movie that's considered bad by critics and fans is insane. On the other hand, there's the DCEU that has only one movie so far that has a critic score higher than 55% and an audience score of more than 75%. It shows that Marvel and Disney seem to know what they're doing with their superheroes. That's why it's hard for me to think that Captain Marvel will be a bad film. The film might follow a cookie cutter formula, but then again, basically all of the MCU films follow a formula anyways. In the last 3 years, 10 films have come out, and the lowest scored one was Age of Ultron, which had a respectable 75%. By this point, I think Marvel knows what they're doing, so I doubt Captain Marvel will turn out to be bad. But just because it's not a bad movie doesn't necessarily mean it will make money, right? Well, like I said, only one movie has grossed less than $300 million, and only two under 400. In fact, in the last 8 years, only one of them had grossed less than $600 million. That was 2015's Ant-Man at about $519 million. The second lowest grossing movie in that span was 2018's Ant-Man and the Wasp at $620 million. That kind of reassures me that Captain Marvel will probably gross more than $500 million. While we're at it, let's do some math, shall we? With all these numbers in mind, even if Captain Marvel becomes the lowest grossing MCU film in the last 9 years, including next year, then it would still make a profit about $122 million. If it made something like Doctor Strange's grossing, then it would have a profit of roughly $246 million. This is a lot of money we're talking about here. And Doctor Strange isn't even at the top half of the highest grossing MCU films. Captain Marvel does not need to make Black Panther money in order to be called a success. Grossing $600 million is an amazing feat in of itself. If we take out the 4 team-up MCU films, out of the 16 remaining solo films, 9 of them didn't reach the $700 million mark, with only 2 surpassing the $1 billion mark. I'll give you another number to contemplate. According to IMDb, there's 492,432 movies. Of course, this also counts unreleased movies too, so let's grind that number down to an even 492,000. As of this writing, there are 143 movies that have grossed more than $600 million. That's approximately only 0.03% of all movies that have reached that milestone. I know there's people out there that think that a big budget movie grossing $600 million is not impressive, and if it grossed only that much, then it wasn't a success. It might be hard to believe it, but before the mid-2000s, it wasn't very common for movies to make that much money. Now we get them all the time, so it doesn't feel special anymore. Remember, Return of the King was once the second highest grossing movie of all time until 2009's Avatar took over the #1 spot, where it remains to this day, and kicked Return of the King down to number 3. At that time, only 5 movies had passed the $1 billion mark, excluding movies that had been re-released. In 9 years since then, Return of the King has been brought down to number 21, with 36 total movies grossing more than $1 billion, including 4 that have passed $2 billion. So yeah, I can see why there are people that don't see a movie grossing $600 million as a good thing anymore. But it is a good thing, unless of course your movie is Justice League. On a last note about grossing more than $600 million, I counted only 10 movies of the 143 that were before the year 2000. Let that sink in. And my final point, at last. People are excited for this movie. Sure, there's a group of people who are not interested in this movie at all, or weren't happy with what they saw from the first trailer, or just had a hate for the movie even before the trailer came out for their own reasons. But I think that group is pretty small. Why do I think this? Well, in a week, the Captain Marvel trailer accumulated almost 40 million views, with a 93% like to dislike ratio. If there truly was a lot of people upset about this film, then I think we would have seen something similar to the Star Wars Resistance trailer that has a 9% approval rating. Even if it wasn't that bad, there would be a considerable amount of dislikes. We all know how the internet reacts to stuff. If it was as bad as people make it out to be, then we would see that. The fact that the Captain Marvel trailer has about the same amount of views as the Black Panther trailer got over 11 months, with more than double the amount of likes, and the ratio of likes to dislikes isn't that far off either. Of course, this doesn't mean Captain Marvel will gross the same money as Black Panther did. I seriously doubt it will do that. But Black Panther was an event by itself, and it even grossed more domestically than Infinity War did. That's insane. I think the fact that Captain Marvel being teased at the end of Infinity War as the last hope has a lot of people excited to see her origin movie, as potentially being the savior of the MCU. Also, being the first female lead MCU film probably has garnered some extra attention. Do I think Captain Marvel will be breaking any records? Fuck no. Except for maybe biggest opening weekend for a female-led movie, possibly, but a superficial record such as that isn't really noteworthy. Or maybe it is, I don't know. But I think, barring a terrible script and an overall boring experience, that the Captain Marvel movie will make money. As I said earlier, it doesn't need to be on the same level as Black Panther to be successful. If the budget is what I think it will be, and is similar to what Wikipedia says, then even if it grosses $500 million, it will still have a profit of over $100 million. I do think, however, that given how the MCU films gross, I can easily see it grossing $600 million or more. So as long as it's not a bad movie, Captain Marvel will do fine at the box office.